A cocky football star believed his fame made him untouchable, until a routine sidewalk warning from a seasoned police officer turned into a moment that would haunt his career forever. What began as laughter ended in stunned silence, and it was all caught on camera. Tell us where you're tuning in from. Drop your state or city in the comments, and let us know how you'd react if you were in that officer's shoes. It was one of those spring nights in Atlanta, Georgia. Warm air still clinging to the streets after a day drenched in sunlight. On the corner of Peachtree Street, the nightlife was kicking into gear. Neon signs buzzed above rows of luxury bars and restaurants, while the sidewalks pulsed with life, fans, tourists, and influencers all brushing shoulders. The most crowded block that night? Right outside a sports bar called the Gridiron Vault, a hotspot where local celebrities and athletes were known to make appearances after major games. The bar's rooftop glowed in deep amber light, and downstairs, a sea of fans had gathered, not for drinks, but for a glimpse of one particular star. Jamal "Jet" Richardson had arrived. At just 23 years old, Jet had become a household name in Atlanta, and was starting to rise on the national radar. As a wide receiver for the city's professional football team, his highlight reels had gone viral. His jersey was one of the top sellers, and sports channels couldn't get enough of his charisma. But for those who knew him beyond the field, another side of Jamal was becoming harder to ignore. Success had come fast. Too fast. He was known for skipping press conferences, disrespecting referees, and flaunting his wealth on social media with captions like, "From cleats to yachts, get like me." His fans called it swagger. His critics called it arrogance. And that night, outside the Gridiron Vault, his ego would meet its match. Patrolling that same stretch of sidewalk was Officer Marcus Daniels, a 47-year-old veteran of the Atlanta Police Department. With 23 years of service, Marcus had walked these streets longer than many of the clubgoers had been alive. His reputation wasn't built on intimidation or brute force, but on discipline, restraint, and a quiet authority that spoke louder than any siren. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't loud. But when Officer Daniels gave you an instruction, you knew it came from experience. A former Marine turned community officer, Daniels had served tours overseas before joining the APD. He'd diffused standoffs, protected dignitaries, and helped train younger officers in conflict resolution. His uniform was always sharp, his tone calm, and his eyes missed nothing. By 11:07 p.m., the sidewalk outside the Gridiron was overcrowded. Fans were spilling into the street, blocking foot traffic and snapping selfies. A few leaned against parked cars. The noise was manageable, for now. Officer Daniels, clipboard in hand, calmly made his way down the block, giving quiet reminders to patrons to stay clear of the curb. Most complied with polite nods. But when he reached the Gridiron's VIP corner, the mood changed. Jamal stood in the middle of the sidewalk, surrounded by a few entourage members and fans. Loud, boastful, and clearly basking in the attention, he raised a drink and shouted, "ATL in the building. Y'all know I run this city." Phones were filming, people cheered. Then Daniels approached. "Excuse me, gentlemen," he said firmly. "I need you to clear the walkway. We can't have this crowd blocking pedestrian flow." Jamal turned toward him, squinting. "You serious right now?" he asked, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "Man, you know who I am?" Daniels nodded. "Yes, sir. Doesn't change city ordinance. Sidewalk has to stay clear." Jamal let out a loud laugh, throwing an arm around a friend. "My man, it's just a couple pictures. Ain't nobody getting hurt out here." "I understand, but rules apply to everyone," Daniels replied. "You're welcome to keep taking photos just off to the side." That's when Jamal's smile turned, just a little. "You trying to embarrass me in front of my people?" Daniels kept his voice even. "I'm asking you to respect public space, that's all." A beat of silence. Then, louder, "Yo, somebody record this!" Jamal barked. We got Officer Hard Guy over here thinking he's gonna flex on a Pro Bowler." Laughter erupted. One of his friends added, "This dude mad he didn't get tickets to the game?" Daniel stood his ground, his posture calm, no hand on his belt, no raised voice. But something had shifted in the crowd. The tone went from playful to uncomfortable. A woman in the back murmured, "He shouldn't be doing this." Another man, clearly a fan, lowered his phone slightly and shook his head. And yet, Jamal pushed forward. He stepped in front of Daniels now, just a foot or two away. "Let me ask you something," he said. "You ever play ball? You ever make six figures in one night? You ever have your face on a billboard?" Daniels looked him in the eye, calm as stone. "I've served my city for over 20 years, and I don't need a billboard to know what that means." It wasn't a clapback. It wasn't dramatic. But it hit harder than any insult. The crowd was caught between awe and anticipation. Phones were still recording, now with hushed excitement. This wasn't just a celebrity sighting anymore. This was something else. Jamal took a slow sip from his drink. "Man," he muttered, "you're just jealous. You see me shining, and it bothers you. I get it." Daniel said nothing. He simply repeated, "Sir, I'm giving you one more warning. Please move your group to the side." For a moment, even Jamal looked unsure, but the cameras were watching. His ego was too inflated to back down. He puffed out his chest, looked directly into one of the phones and said, "This cop's on a power trip, trying to flex on a king." Then he pointed a finger at Officer Daniels's badge. The finger didn't touch him, but it hovered, too close, too disrespectful. The line had been crossed. The charged energy on the sidewalk grew with every passing second. What had begun as playful banter was now turning into a dangerous game of egos. The air was thick with tension as Jamal "Jet" Richardson continued his show. No longer content with mere words, he launched into a series of bold gestures that captured the attention and the unease of everyone present. Jamal's initial smirk gave way to an expression of pure defiance. With a careless toss of his hair, he moved closer to Officer Marcus Daniels, his voice rising in a tone that bordered on a challenge. "Look, man," Jamal barked, his tone dripping with arrogance. "You think just because you're in a uniform you can boss me around?" He spread his arms wide, as if to claim the entire sidewalk as his domain. His entourage laughed raucously, egging him on, while the cameras captured every moment. The officer, whose calm had so far remained unbroken, felt a subtle tightening in his jaw. His eyes, steady and unwavering, met Jamal's with a quiet intensity that sent a ripple through the gathering crowd. "Sir," Daniel said again, his voice measured yet firm, "I must insist that you and your companions step aside. This is not the place for that kind of behavior." Jamal's retort came swiftly, almost dismissively. "Step aside? Since when did following rules become a part of being cool?" His words echoed off the nearby brick walls, drawing mixed reactions, some bursts of laughter and others murmurs of disapproval. A few onlookers began to step back, sensing that the situation was straying from harmless fun. As the tension escalated, Jamal's body language grew more aggressive. He paced a few paces in front of Daniels, each step deliberately close to the officer's space. "You think you're so important, don't you?" He jeered, voice slightly slurred by the remnants of his earlier drinks. "I mean, come on, you're just a guy in a badge. I've got fans, endorsements, and my name is on everyone's lips. Who are you to tell me what to do?" A murmur swept through the crowd. Some whispered that Jamal's bravado was beginning to look more like a desperate bid for attention rather than genuine confidence. Others, caught up in the excitement, continued to cheer him on. The cacophony of voices created an almost surreal atmosphere, an arena where the stakes were nothing less than public honor and personal pride. Officer Daniels remained an island of calm amid the growing storm. His posture was unyielding, his gaze fixed intently on Jamal. There was a dignity in his silence that contrasted sharply with the unruly energy of the moment. Every word he spoke was chosen with care, intended to de-escalate without compromising the law or his duty. "Sir, I understand you are a public figure," Daniel said slowly. "But respect for authority is not just a formality. It's a cornerstone of our community's safety. I am asking you once more to move your group off the main path." Jamal's eyes flashed with indignation. "Respect? Look at you," he scoffed, leaning in closer with a sneer. "You're nothing but a glorified babysitter for people who can't handle their own lives." The insult hung in the air, and a noticeable shift occurred among the spectators. Some faces tightened with disapproval, while others looked on, uncertain of what to expect next. Emboldened by the murmurs of approval from a segment of the crowd, Jamal raised his voice even further. "You know what, officer? I'm tired of being pushed around by people who have nothing better to do than hide behind rules. I'm out here living my life, and if you want to ruin it with your outdated ideas, be my guest." He paused, letting the words sink in, his tone laced with both mockery and a touch of defiance that bordered on recklessness. A bystander, a middle-aged man in a team jacket, muttered under his breath, "This is going too far." Yet, his words were lost in the rising clamor. The sound of applause from some quarters clashed with anxious whispers from others. The tension had reached a boiling point. At that moment, Officer Daniel's calm began to shift imperceptibly. His eyes, once merely composed, now held a steely resolve. He took a deliberate step forward, his voice rising just enough to carry over the tumult without sounding aggressive. "Sir, I have warned you several times. For the safety of everyone present, I must insist that you comply immediately." His words, precise and authoritative, cut through the clamor like a knife. Jamal's retort faltered for a split second, a moment so brief it could have been overlooked, yet it was enough for the crowd to sense the imminent change. The confident glimmer in his eyes dimmed as he realized that this was no longer a battle of words alone. In that instant, the room seemed to hold its breath. Then, without further hesitation, Officer Daniels moved decisively. In one swift, deliberate motion, he stepped directly into Jamal's path, his presence radiating unyielding authority. "Sir, step back immediately," Daniels commanded, his voice unwavering and final. The tone left no room for negotiation or misunderstanding. The effect was instantaneous and profound. Jamal, who had until now carried an air of invincibility, froze. His eyes widened, and his confident facade crumbled in an instant. It was as if time slowed down. The sounds of the cheering, the murmurs, even the distant hum of the city seemed to fade away. In that moment, the full force of reality hit him. His behavior had crossed a line that no amount of celebrity status could protect him from. Around them, the crowd reacted in shock and awe. A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. Phones that had been capturing every moment now trembled in uncertain hands. Some people stepped back instinctively, while others leaned forward, drawn by the intensity of the scene unfolding before their eyes. Officer Daniels's face remained impassive, yet his eyes betrayed the gravity of his commitment. "I said, step back," he repeated firmly. His stance was unyielding, a clear signal that he was no longer merely requesting compliance, but enforcing the law with the full weight of his experience and duty. For a long, agonizing moment, Jamal stood there, caught between defiance and the dawning realization of the consequences of his actions. His bravado evaporated as he recognized that he was alone against an immovable force. The cameras captured every nuance: the tremor in his hand, the faltering beat of his heart, the sudden heaviness in his voice. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, with a visible shudder, Jamal's eyes filled with shock and regret. "Officer, I didn't mean to," he stammered, his voice cracking under the weight of his realization. His entourage, once full of laughter and cheers, now fell silent, their earlier mirth replaced by a mix of fear and regret. Around the scene, whispers turned to murmurs of concern. A young fan, tears welling up in her eyes, whispered, "He's really in trouble now." While an older gentleman shook his head, muttering, "Fame isn't worth this kind of shame." Officer Daniels maintained his composure, his tone softening ever so slightly as he addressed Jamal once more. "This isn't about fame, sir. It's about respect. Respect for the community, for the rules that keep us safe. I urge you to consider your actions." The gravity of his words resonated with the gathered crowd, many of whom now looked on with a mixture of relief and sorrow at witnessing a public fall from grace. Jamal's face flushed with a deep, unmistakable regret. In that moment, the man who had been so full of bravado realized that he had not only disrespected a law officer, but had also betrayed the trust of his fans and community. His earlier defiance was replaced by a desperate need to retreat, to salvage whatever dignity he could. In a final, almost inaudible gesture, Jamal slowly took a step back, his eyes locked on the unyielding figure of Officer Daniels. The commanding presence of the officer, the quiet authority of his posture, and the unspoken message in his eyes left no doubt that this confrontation was over, at least for now. The once rowdy atmosphere was now subdued, replaced by a heavy silence filled with introspection and regret. Many in the crowd began to disperse, their expressions a mix of shock, empathy, and relief that the situation had not escalated further. The cameras, still recording, captured every moment of the transformation. Each shift in emotion, every silent apology in Jamal's eyes. Officer Daniels, ever the epitome of professional discipline, turned his attention back to the now quiet sidewalk. Without missing a beat, he resumed his patrol, his duty unblemished by the brief disruption. Yet the impact of that decisive moment lingered in the air, a reminder that respect is not given lightly, and that authority, when exercised with discipline, commands a power that no celebrity or arrogance can overcome. Jamal lingered for a few moments longer, his mind racing through the consequences of his actions. Regret mixed with a dawning understanding of the lesson he had been forced to learn. A lesson about humility, responsibility, and the unwavering nature of true authority. The atmosphere on Peachtree Street had shifted dramatically in the wake of the confrontation. In the moments after Officer Daniels's firm command, the energy that had once vibrated with reckless bravado had given way to a heavy, palpable stillness. The crowd's earlier laughter and jeers were replaced by murmurs of disbelief and regret. For many, the surreal collision of celebrity arrogance and disciplined authority had become a live lesson in respect. As Jamal "Jet" Richardson stood frozen, his eyes wide with shock and his face slowly losing its earlier defiant smirk, the once animated bystanders began to process the gravity of what they had witnessed. Cameras, once pointed eagerly at the unfolding spectacle, now captured a scene that resonated with solemnity. Jamal's entourage, who had cheered him on moments before, now exchanged worried glances. The realization was dawning on them all. What had started as a show of celebrity bravado was spiraling into a real-life lesson in accountability. Within minutes, uniformed security personnel arrived on the scene. Their presence was methodical and assured, echoing the calm determination of Officer Daniels. Two plainclothes officers, along with a security supervisor, quickly assessed the situation. Their eyes, trained to spot any further escalation, scanned the area as they moved in to ensure that the situation would not devolve further. The atmosphere was tense, yet there was a sense of order being restored. A commanding voice cut through the silence as one of the officers addressed Jamal, now standing uncertainly with his head bowed. "Mr. Richardson, please step aside and come with us," the officer said firmly but without malice. The words, delivered with the precision of years of training, signaled that the matter was being taken seriously. Jamal's defiance melted into apprehension. His eyes darted between the officers and the remaining onlookers, each gaze a reminder that his actions were no longer just a moment of rebellious performance. They were now a public spectacle with real consequences. The officer's colleagues gently but resolutely escorted Jamal away from the crowded sidewalk. Each step he took was measured, the weight of every previous boast and disrespectful gesture coming back to haunt him. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every moment as the once confident star was led to the waiting police cruiser. His entourage trailed behind, their earlier enthusiasm replaced by an unmistakable aura of regret and uncertainty. It was as if the entire scene had collectively exhaled, acknowledging that the bubble of unchecked arrogance had been irreparably burst. As Jamal was taken aside, Officer Daniels remained a steadfast sentinel in his spot. He watched quietly as his colleagues ensured that the situation was contained. The security team began to disperse the remaining crowd, urging them to return to their homes or resume their evening with a renewed sense of caution. Still, many lingered, their expressions a mix of awe, pity, and introspection. In the wake of the incident, social media began to buzz with live updates, comments, and a flood of hashtags that would soon trend across the nation. Within the next half hour, local news crews arrived, and the story was broadcast live across several platforms. Clips of the confrontation were replayed over and over, accompanied by commentary that ranged from shock to moral reflection. Viewers, both in Atlanta and nationwide, debated the fine line between freedom of expression and respect for authority. In the digital age, where every moment is recorded and shared, Jamal's misstep became a cautionary tale, a reminder that celebrity status does not grant immunity from the law. Inside the police cruiser, as Jamal sat silently with his head hanging low, his mind raced through the whirlwind of events. The reality of his situation began to sink in. The bravado that had defined his public persona seemed to evaporate in the face of cold, undeniable consequence. Regret mingled with a dawning sense of responsibility, and for the first time in a long while, Jamal felt vulnerable. His inner dialogue was relentless, questions of what had led him to this point, reflections on the value of humility, and the stark realization that respect is not something to be demanded or taken lightly, but something that must be earned. Back on the sidewalk, Officer Daniels took a brief moment to speak with the arriving security team. In a low, calm voice, he reiterated the importance of maintaining public order and protecting community values. His words were measured and filled with the wisdom that comes from decades of service. "It's not about personal vendettas or showing off authority," he explained to one of the younger officers, whose eyes were wide with the gravity of the situation. "It's about ensuring that every citizen feels safe and that rules, no matter who you are, apply equally. We serve the community, and our job is to protect its integrity." The dialogue among the officers reflected a deep-seated respect for the law and the duty they had sworn to uphold. They knew that their actions that night were not just about managing a disturbance, they were about setting an example. The repercussions of the incident were inevitable. In the days that followed, discussions about the role of authority and the limits of celebrity behavior would dominate public discourse. Yet, for Officer Daniels and his team, the focus remained on upholding the law with fairness and integrity. Once the immediate tension had subsided, the narrative began to shift toward rehabilitation and introspection. Jamal, facing the stern reality of his actions, was required to attend a mandatory meeting at the local precinct. In a small, somber room lined with motivational posters and community messages, he sat facing a panel of senior officers. The meeting was not a public trial, but a candid conversation intended to help him understand the broader implications of his behavior. Senior Sergeant Lewis, a veteran known for his tough but fair approach, addressed him directly. "Mr. Richardson," Sergeant Lewis began, his tone steady and authoritative. "What happened tonight isn't just about breaking a rule. It's about breaking the trust of your fans, your community, and even yourself. You have a platform, and with that comes responsibility. I want you to reflect on the values that truly define success: integrity, respect, and humility. The words, simple yet profound, resonated deeply with Jamal. For the first time, he began to see his actions not as isolated moments of rebellion, but as choices that had far-reaching consequences. The meeting continued for over an hour, during which he was asked to share his thoughts, to listen, and to acknowledge the harm his behavior had caused. There were no harsh punishments, only an opportunity for personal growth and an earnest invitation to change. That session, though difficult and humbling, marked the beginning of what many hoped would be a long journey toward redemption. Outside the precinct, the public response was equally reflective. Social media influencers, community leaders, and even former critics began to engage in conversations about the nature of respect and the responsibilities that come with fame. Opinion pieces emerged in local newspapers, discussing how the incident was a reminder that no one is above the law and that authority is a mantle earned through years of discipline and service. In community centers and local forums, discussions sparked about how respect and accountability can serve as the foundation for a healthier society. As the night wore on, the street that had once been the stage for a dramatic showdown gradually returned to normal. The neon lights flickered back to life, and the steady hum of Atlanta's nightlife resumed. But the echoes of that fateful confrontation remained, etched into the memory of everyone who had witnessed it. For many, it was a vivid illustration that the true measure of a person lies not in their accolades or social media following, but in their capacity to respect others and to be accountable for their actions. In the days that followed, Jamal Richardson's public image was irrevocably changed. Endorsement deals were put on hold, and interviews were canceled as he attempted to navigate the fallout of his behavior. His social media accounts were flooded with a mix of support, criticism, and heartfelt messages urging him to learn from this experience. In one candid post, Jamal himself wrote, "Last night was a wake-up call. I've learned that real strength is shown when you admit your mistakes and work to be better. I'm sorry for the disrespect I showed. This is a lesson I'll never forget." The post, although met with mixed reactions, signaled the beginning of a slow, yet sincere process of rebuilding trust. Officer Daniels, too, found that his steady handling of the situation resonated deeply with the public. Interviews with local news outlets painted him as a symbol of disciplined authority, a man who, in the face of provocations and unruly behavior, chose to uphold the law with dignity and respect. "It wasn't about confrontation," Daniels said in one interview. "It was about ensuring that every person, no matter their status, understands that respect isn't optional. It's essential for our community to thrive." As the episode became part of the public record, it also sparked broader conversations about celebrity culture and the sometimes dangerous consequences of unchecked arrogance. Community leaders organized town hall meetings to discuss how public figures could better understand their influence on society. Educators began incorporating discussions about respect, responsibility, and the role of authority into school programs. In this way, a single moment of discord evolved into a catalyst for collective introspection and positive change. In the quiet that followed the storm, one lesson stood out above all. True respect cannot be demanded. It must be earned through humility, discipline, and a commitment to the common good. The incident on Peachtree Street became more than just a story of celebrity arrogance and police intervention. It became a mirror held up to society, reflecting our shared values and the importance of accountability. We are all, in some way, responsible for the culture we help create. When those in the spotlight fail to respect the community that elevates them, the consequences ripple out, touching everyone. Conversely, when authority figures act with fairness and dignity, they remind us that the strength of a community lies in its adherence to shared principles of respect and justice. So, as you reflect on this dramatic encounter between Jamal Richardson and Officer Marcus Daniels, ask yourself, how would you have handled the situation if you were in their shoes? Could a moment of conflict transform into an opportunity for growth and renewed respect? Let these questions guide your thoughts as we all strive to contribute to a community built on integrity and mutual understanding. If you found this story as eye-opening and thought-provoking as we did, please show your support by liking this video, subscribing to Authority Watch, and clicking the notification bell. Your engagement helps us continue to bring you dramatic, real-life stories that challenge us all to be better. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments below. This powerful account reminds us that every encounter, whether between a celebrity and an officer or among any members of society, is an opportunity to learn about the values that truly matter. Respect, accountability, and humility are not privileges granted by fame, but principles that must be earned through our actions every day. Let this story be a lesson for us all as we navigate the complex intersections of public life and personal responsibility.